All right, we are live. So, hey guys, if you want to hear what has happened in Africa over the last 7 days, there's a lot of news to cover. We're going to go over it all here. I want to make sure you have all the information and you have all the context about what's been going on. And if you want to know, then this is the video for you. All right. We are live. Let me know if you guys can hear me. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. And also, I want to know where you're watching from. So we're live on Instagram. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. And I think that's about it. But let me know where you guys are watching from. So first of all, give me a thumbs up so I know you can hear me. And then secondly, let me know where you're watching from. So if you guys are watching from any particular city or country, let me know the city and the country you're watching from. So we got Optimus Prime is watching from Portugal. Nice. Let's see. Nolan Williams is watching from Sacramento, California. Okay. Loud and clear. WWOLUD said you can hear me loud and clear. Live from Colombia. Shout out to Colombia. Seattle Rain said Seattle, Washington. You can hear me. Nice. So we got ALOOFNNL, Instagram, is watching from Montreal, Canada. What else do we got? L Fontaine, LA Fontaine is watching from Toronto. Adrian's watching from San Jose. Slatjana is watching from Baltimore. Okay. MZ Venia is watching from Montgomery, Alabama. Black History Month, Montgomery, Alabama. We got HUSRY31 watching from Tallahassee, Florida. Unity of the Lions is watching from Chicago. Okay. Negus is watching from Costa Rica. Kimberly's watching from Pennsylvania. What do we have? So we got a bunch of people. We got Delaware, we got California, we got England. Mike is watching from New York. Earth, Soulstar, is watching from IG Philly. Nice. Darla Justice is watching from California. Charles Smith is watching from Mactown. What's Mactown? Is that yeah, I don't know what Mactown is. Tell me what Mactown is. UDALEGEN is watching from America, which obviously is America. We got Stella watching from New Jersey. BM Home Essentials watching from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, which is where I was just a couple months ago. All right, cool. So again, my name is Joe Hatagwa. I am a Sierra Leonean American. I do live in West Africa. I'm in Sierra Leone right now, and I am building this platform to bring the diaspora and Africans together. The goal is to ensure we are all on the same page as to what is available to us to ensure that we are advancing all of us forward, not just for the good of some, but for the good of all. So that's really what this is all about. Today, we're going to go over some news that went on across the continent of Africa over the last 7 days. There's a lot going on. We're going to talk about it. And we want to make sure you guys are just up to speed and got the context. Now, as you guys might see, there's a couple different things going on as of recent, as you guys who are following may or may not know. So first of all, let me just say this is the 4th anniversary. Wait on, 2019 to 2020, 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, 2022 to 2023. This is the 5th anniversary. This is the 5th anniversary of Authentic African. We started in February 2019. 19 to 20, 2021, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Yeah, it's the 5th anniversary. I can't believe it's been live for 5 years. We've had some fits and starts, ebbs and flows. Took a while to kind of get our footing. You know, this is something that takes a long time and a lot of effort. And let me tell you guys something. I have been working with social media managers to help me manage this page for the whole 5 years, from the day one. It wasn't until the last 12 to 16 months where I've been more active in doing some of the posting. You guys might notice, you see the brand voice changing a little bit from time to time. You'll notice that there are different kinds of posts there. And I've been really more involved heavily with really helping to make sure that the information comes across. And so through that, we've grown tremendously. I think you guys might know at the beginning of 2023, we had 50,000 followers, which was a huge milestone for us. We were really excited about that because it took us, kind of 3 years to get to 30,000. And then it took us another couple years. It took us, 3 years to get to 30,000. And it took us a whole year to get to 50,000. But we went to 30,000 for 3 years. The fourth year got us to 50,000. And then last year, we skyrocketed from 50,000 to over 200,000 by the end of last year. And now we're at 255,000 followers on Instagram. So that's thanks to all of you sharing the pages, sharing the posts, and making sure that people know the information that we're providing. Also, what has happened more recently is I've had a couple of partnerships with a few folks, and that's relevant today because I'm going to be sharing some of the news and stories that came from the partnerships that we have. So we've had partnerships with Africa Stream, with Red Stream, with African Motivation. So there's a few pages now that we're working as collaborators, and they are sending posts to me, and I am operating as a collaborator, posting them on my page. So you'll see live breaking news from me and things that are happening on the continent of Africa. And then from time to time, you'll see posts that are also being shared by some of our partners, the good folks at Africa Stream, African Motivation, and Red Stream. So with that, I think that's a little bit about me and the page and what's been going on. Again, those of you who don't know, I usually go through a presentation, didn't have the time to work on that today. My mother's in town. She's here in Sierra Leone. I'm in Sierra Leone right now. So, we've been going around to different places and doing a lot of different things over the last few days. And so, through that, I've had to condense some of the work that I'm doing. And so today the live is just going to be kind of going through the stories as posted on Instagram and giving some context and some information behind them. So we're not going to do a presentation today. It makes more sense to just do that. But yeah, so we just came back from one of the outer provinces this weekend. And so it wasn't just that she's here, but there's also other things happening here. We had a family member recently passed. And so there's some insight into why there's no presentation today. It's been running around like crazy the last 5 days and just haven't been in one place longer than a 24-hour period. Actually, no, longer than a 48-hour period in the last 5 days. So it means that there's a lot of movement. Okay, so we're going to do this. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to walk you through the stories that I want to review. So there's a bunch of stories, and I think they're all important, and so we'll make sure we go over them. Real quick, though, just a couple people tapping in. Jerry Campbell. Shout out to Terry Campbell. He's Jerry Campbell tapping in from Barbados. We also have Anne-Marie Harding watching from London, and Kevin Van Veen is watching from the Netherlands. All right, so we're going to share the screen. I'm going to present my screen here, and I'm going to share my, let's see, Authentic African. Let's see. Okay, this is what we'll share. I had to be careful. I didn't want to share my inbox in case there was anything there from any potential partnerships or clients that is not supposed to be shared with the general public. All right. So let me know when you guys can see my screen. Give me a thumbs up so I know you guys can see my screen. Yeah, so let me know when you guys can see my screen. Give me a thumbs up when you can see it. Let me just double check with IG. Can you guys see my screen? It's kind of meta that I'm sharing my Instagram screen also on Instagram. But let me know if you guys can see it. Let me see if there's any other questions, comments. We got Macon, Georgia in the house. We got New Jersey. We got Lebanon. A number of different people. Costa Rica. Okay. Yeah, there's people from everywhere. Timbuktu. All right. All right, cool. So let's get into it. So if those of you who are not following, of course, well, you guys are all following if you're watching on Instagram. But those of you who are not following from other places, take a look and start following for sure. There's going to be tons of information and insight here to kind of help you understand what is going on the continent of Africa and in the diaspora. Just as of right now, this number is a bit off. It says 8.8 million accounts reached in the last 30 days. It should be 9.3 million accounts reached in the last 30 days. At least that's what the mobile app says. But let's go through some of the stories. So there's a lot here. And so the other thing I want to mention is I do have a YouTube channel where I go through my experiences. So I went to the Gambia. And so there's some clips and posts here from my trip to the Gambia. So you guys definitely want to check that out. So let's go to last week. I'm going to just jump into some of the posts from last week and give some context to some of it. It's taken a little while to really get this. Okay, so a couple of different things I think we want to talk about. First is there is, I think we'll start with the Congolese protests. Because I think this is interesting, right? Because this is something that we hadn't seen to date. We had seen the genocide happening in the Congo. We hadn't seen a lot around protest and the conversation on protest. So I'd like to go into this post and talk about it. So now this is Redstream, which is one of the partnerships that I have, right? And so if you guys want to hear the audio, since people are watching on different platforms, I don't want to play the audio for you guys here, but I just want to get into the story and really talk about what is going on here. So the quote says here, "We don't want them here because they are the ones destroying our country." Now this is speaking about the Europeans and the other people from the West. This is how the folks from the Congo are feeling right now. So the residents of the city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo took to the streets to protest Western interference amid heightened militia violence. Footage shows that the protesters burning US and EU flags as they mourned the most recent victims who experienced loss of life by the M23 rebels. Tens of thousands of people have been fleeing the Central African countries east as the M23 rebels are advancing in the regional capital. So the protesters blame Western-backed governments under the president for enabling this advance. So there was a ceasefire that had been brokered last year. It has been repeatedly violated, with the UN mission and the military having long faced criticism for their inability to contain the rebels and pacify the region. So very clearly, one of the things that people have challenges with in terms of the UN, not just here, but even in the discussion around what's going on with the ICJ and the case against genocide in in Palestine, is the fact that people feel like people feel like the United Nations doesn't have a way to enforce the things that they suggest or recommend or say that they're going to do. And so this post, I think, really highlights that. And if you want to get more information, and just read this post and actually watch this video and hear from the folks directly as to what they're feeling. I think it's really important to get more context on that. So that was one post I wanted to go to. This was sad because this one is the children in the Congo who are dealing with what has been going on there and pleading with the world for help, basically, and for just to end any kind of financial occupation and to ensure that their safety is no longer compromised, right? Too deep into that, but that's what this post is about. So it's furthering the story on the Congo. Before I move on, let me see if there are any other questions, comments, thoughts on what's happening in the Congos. Okay, in the Congo. So Ease Echo Solutions is asking, is it safe to go to Sierra Leone? Yes, that's a basic quick answer to that. Yes, it is. Any other questions, comments on anything happening in the Congo right now? I don't see any comments as of yet, but I'll go back and check to see if there's anything that comes up. But again, this is in partnership with Africa Stream. They did a really good job of curating these different stories and putting them together, which is why I've agreed to share them on my platform. I was already following Africa Stream and paying attention to what they've been doing. The last 6 months, they've also really grown tremendously because they've really done a good job of really curating these stories and helping people understand what's going on in the continent of Africa. And so it's been good to collaborate with them to really get a lot of what they're working on out to our followers. Let's go into this story. So at one point, so this question is basically saying December 2023, was Niger, had they warned ECOWAS of what was happening with them potentially breaking off of the ECOWAS bloc? And so it says, perhaps this was Niger's final warning to the Economic Community of West African States before Burkina Faso and Mali pulled out of the regional bloc. After the July coup in Niger, which deposed then President Mohamed Bazoum, ECOWAS imposed the strictest set of sanctions in history against a member state. ECOWAS, along with the 8-member West African Economic Community and Monetary Union, agreed to close their borders with Niger, suspend financial transactions, freeze the country's assets in external banks, and suspend financial assistance to the regional development banks. So obviously these sanctions were devastating. Now, just to skip, these 3 states seemed unbothered, however, as they went on to establish a mutual defiance pact in the form of Alliance of Sahel States on the 16th of September. So even with all of these things happening, the sanctions, they decided to form a pact with each other. And then they've continued to further that pact over the last 4 to 5 months. So they're just fortifying this pact. And they officially announced they are leaving ECOWAS earlier this month. So that's another story, right? And I think it's really interesting to call out the fact that there's a growing sentiment around the continent, around it, or about the interference from the West on the continent. I think what most Africans you'll hear will broadly state is they'd like to see more cooperation and business agreements as opposed to handouts and forcing Africans to agree to the belief systems that the West has. That seems to be the general sentiment here. And that's important to know because there are people in direct competition with the West who are taking advantage of this sentiment, meaning Russia, meaning China, right? Where they're coming into the continent of Africa and actually doing business with countries, right? Now, are the agreements fair? Do the agreements put the continent of Africa in debt over extended periods of time? These are all things that people argue. And I think it's up to you all to decide what you think about that. But I think it's important to know that this is the reason why some of these coups have happened, and there is growing sentiment against the West. And I think that's a dangerous place for the West to be if they want to continue to grow their influence, right? If they want to grow their influence, they need to take a page out of the book of those who are having success, Russia, namely Russia and China, if they want to be able to have that same kind of success in Africa. I think the problem that the United States has is the United States looks at Africa as its child. Whereas I would say China and Russia look at Africa as a younger sibling. It's not the same. I think in both instances, there's still the belief system that you are, you have a long way to go to get to to our level. But, and maybe that's not a good analogy. Let's try another one. I'll say this. Here we go. This is a better one. I think that the United States actually kind of looks at Africa like a lot of times like a homeless person, right? Where, as you notice, like most homeless people who are begging, you give a little bit of change to, right? Where I think the way that the people in the Far East look at the continent of Africa is probably a little bit more like, I guess if the analogy is, and we just lost light. This is one of the challenges we have here, which is why, by the way, Burkina Faso has decided that they are going to get nuclear power from Russia because they have similar situations like this where light just goes. Let me turn on this flashlight, see if it actually helps at all. I guess it has a little bit of an impact. Put it down here. So anyway, yeah, so you know, as you can see, these things happen. And what you find is most countries would say, okay, let's just give them money to work on electrification. Whereas you see with Russia and Burkina Faso, they've decided to partner with them and create a nuclear power plant. And so I lost the metaphor there, but I hope that that was obvious. I mean, that made sense what I was just expressing, right? That is the difference. That is the major difference between the relationship between East and West. Okay, so light's back now, all of a sudden. So let's try this again. Fingers crossed, light stays on. Turn off this flashlight. This is a serious flashlight. Okay. So any thoughts, concerns, questions on any of that stuff that we're talking about so far? Any of these news stories? I'd love to hear from you guys on this. You know, what I've noticed too, by the way, and oh, by the way, make sure you hit that thumbs up, hit that notification bell, make sure you subscribe. I have been shadow banned on YouTube. Believe it or not, I have been shadow banned on YouTube. People who have their notifications turned on from my channel have not been receiving my notifications. I, in fact, have notifications set on a separate phone that is always on a different Gmail login. So it's not the same as the Authentic African one. And just so I can see whether or not I get the notifications. And I usually get the notifications either 30 minutes later, which is probably why so many people join about 30 minutes into our lives, or I don't get the notification at all. Right? So I have the notification set to all. So the reason why I say make sure you like, comment, subscribe is to ensure that you get these lives and you can join in these discussions and these conversations. Many people that I know are saying that they're not getting them. And I think it's because of being shadow banned. That's a conversation for another time. We'll definitely dive deeper into that. And I'll walk you through everything I've been getting from YouTube along the way since October of last year, all the different messages I've been getting from YouTube. And the more recent one, where they took my live down because I read comments made by our team. Mr. London Boy for Life is in the building. What's up, Mr. London Boy for Life? All right. All is well. All is well. Thanks for asking. All right. So let's get to some of the other stories. I thought that was a good one. Here was an interesting one. Now, so you might remember we had this conversation last week about who may or may not be on the right or the wrong side of history as it pertains to the South Africa's ICG case against Israel. And what was interesting is the one the one judge that sided with Israel in this case was the judge from Uganda, Julia, I think it's Sebutinde. She made headlines for her dissenting opinion on South Africa's genocide case. So it was a dissenting opinion, meaning she sided with Israel. As of the 6th of February, she is the International Court of Justice's vice president now. She just got promoted. She would deputize Lebanese judge, Judge Salam, I guess, who was elected president. So their ICG peers voted by secret ballot for each judge to serve a 3-year term, effective immediately. So that means she'll serve for 3 years. She'll replace the president who's now been promoted. He was the vice president, now he's the president. She's the first and only African woman judge at the ICJ. That's interesting. She has served. She has started serving on February 6th. And out of the 17 judges, the only one to vote against every provisional measure that ICJ imposed on Israel on the 26th of January in the case South Africa brought. So the court established in 1945 to settle legal disputes among UN member states and to issue advisory opinions. So I think it's interesting, one, that the vote is in secret. Two, that she won the vote. Now, I don't know if she won the vote based on this particular ruling. I would imagine it's on a collective of things outside of this ruling. However, 17 judges voted that there should be some provisions and things that Israel should do in order to not be committing a genocide. And only one person outside of Israel and their own judge dissented and voted on the side of Israel. And she was the one. And she is almost immediately promoted, immediately following that vote. So I thought that was interesting. What are you guys' thoughts on this, actually? Let me hear from you guys on this one. Because I know this one had a lot of comments when it was posted and it was talked about. So I want to hear from you guys on this. What do you guys think about her being promoted? Do you think this is part of something larger? Do you think that this was maybe she had done other things and maybe that's why she was promoted? What do you guys think about her being promoted? Do you guys have any thoughts at all on the one person to side with Israel being promoted to vice president of the ICJ, which is huge? That is a big story. It's not a small thing. Well, while I wait to hear back from you guys on your thoughts on this, I'm going to move on to the next story because I really want to hear what you guys think on this one. Because this one was one of those, when I read it, I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to it. I want to kind of read what it means, how it was done. And I tried to see what I could find out about her previous voting history. That wasn't so easy to find. But Kevin Van Veen says, at the very least, it's very bad timing to promote her now. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think the challenge is if the vote was happening and the new president was going to get into place, it was going to have to be a vote for the vice president to be in place as well. So I don't know if you could avoid the timing. I think most people might just say it was the wrong person, right? Considering, but I don't know. I don't know what she had done previously, why. She obviously, her peers felt that she should serve a 3-year term as the vice president. And so, that's what they decided, right? That's what they decided and that's what they've done. I think her vote will be probably one that will be talked about going down in history, right? As the only dissenting vote out of all the votes. And so I'll leave it there at that, because I think that that's something that a lot of people have opinions on, and I'm not going to dive too deep in my own opinion because I'm already shadow banned. I don't want to be removed from all platforms. So Juan Pablo Osa said, did her vote represent any impact? If yes, it's subsistence. If not, makes no sense and could be casual. So it did not. I mean, at the end of the day, the overwhelming majority voted in favor of South Africa's motion. So in this case, her vote did not make any difference. It just almost was a ceremonial stance to say, I support this, considering nobody else was going to vote that way. But I'm not sure how they communicated beforehand or if she knew that everyone was going to vote. But I would imagine if 15 others voted one way, it's likely that they're all in communication and knew something like that was going to happen. When it's an overwhelming number of people voting in a specific way, you would imagine everyone who was making a decision to vote knew what most people were voting. And so I think that that's, it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least, that is how things unfolded immediately following her vote. All right, let me see. Okay, so I mentioned the Congo protests. You know, they and you can see them here. If you want to see more on this, just go to the page and you can check it out. DRC players network, of course. The DRC, sorry, my network is having some challenges, so we'll give it a second for it to show up. But the DRC players at the Africa Cup of Nations. So Afcon is the Africa Cup of Nations. It is a tournament in Africa where all the many African countries compete to see basically who's the best in the continent for that year. And in this, the DRC players said the world is silent over the massacre. So they had a very specific signal that they did where they covered their mouths and I'm trying to see how to describe this. They simulated a weapon to their head, right? As you can see here at this video. And that was done during their national anthem. They did this. And I think it was powerful, it was smart, and it drew a lot of attention to what was going on. And I think we just need to continue to draw attention. I'd love to bring more people on to have conversations about what's happening in the Congo so that people can become fully aware of what's happening. There's a lot going on. There are people on the ground, and I'm looking to try to get them on live to have them explain what it is that's happening, because I think it's really important to really see what is happening in that country and what we can do to support people who are working to fix some of the issues that are there. So what else do we have we want to talk about? There's a lot here, a lot of stories. Let me see here. Okay, so I guess with the Africa Cup of Nations, I don't know if you guys know, but Ivory Coast won. They did beat out Nigeria. This is the third time the Ivory Coast has won. And so kind of a big deal. And what I saw here is that a lot of people here in Sierra Leone were supporting Nigeria, the Golden Eagles, I think it's their name. And I think Ivory Coast is the Elephants, right? Some Elephants. But yeah, this is Ivory Coast's third win. And so it was interesting to see how much of a divide there was amongst fans to see who would win and how people would take sides. It seems like many of the Francophone countries were supporting the Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire, and then many of the Anglophone countries were supporting Nigeria. That's what it seems like mostly. Okay, so Juan Pablo Osa said, what is the ECOWAS position on the DRC situation? I think you mean DRC, not RDC, right? I don't know, because ECOWAS really only focuses, at least in terms of a governing body, on things happening in Economic Community of West African States, and the Congo is not part of that community. So I don't know how often they make statements about countries and happenings outside of the regional bloc. But that's a good question. Maybe something we can look into. All right, so what other stories we have we want to talk about here? Okay, so it got pretty aggressive and violent over the last couple of days with this in the DRC. So burning UN vehicles, as you can see. The anti-Western protests are continuing in the capital DRC as people set fire to barricades outside of the French embassy and UN vehicles. The protests are demanding an end to the Western complicity in the worsening conflict in the DRC as M23 rebels threaten to take a strategically important city in the east. Almost 7 million people have been displaced by the armed conflict within the country's borders, and more than 135,000 of them displaced in the just the past few weeks alone. Let me repeat that, just to be very clear. which is, I didn't know, I mean, until I read this, I didn't know this. And so this is why I wanted to make sure we talked about this. So more than almost 7 million people have been displaced by the armed conflict within the country's borders, and more than 135 of them were displaced in the last few weeks. The UN mission has more than 17,000 staff in the Democratic Republic of Congo and has a budget of 1.1 billion for 2023, which was making it the world's most expensive peacekeeping force. However, it seems as though they didn't do a good job of keeping peace, clearly. Any thoughts on this? Anybody have any thoughts on this? So Jax Rouge says, how does Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger leaving ECOWAS affect us from traveling to those countries? Well, here's what I would say generally. Currently, they haven't really fully pulled out of ECOWAS. You are supposed to give, if I'm not mistaken, a 12-month leeway before you pull out. And they haven't, I don't know if they've made an official resignment from ECOWAS with the ECOWAS group. So as of right now, technically they're sanctioned, but they're not removed. So as of this moment, from what I understand, you should be able to go with an ECOWAS passport if you so choose to go one of those three countries. I will say, varying degrees of difficulty going and entering, and what can be done there if you go. But from what I understand, technically, your visa should still be allowed. I haven't seen any announcements on the contrary. I don't know if that changes if they change their status and you're still in country. Then obviously, if you have another passport from another country, namely the US or the European Union or UK or whatever, you may be able to use that and go to that embassy and get airlifted if anything goes down. Okay. Couple more stories to go over, and we'll call it a night. So the UN has also, same organization that has been protested and against, has also been trying to tell folks not to forget about Sudan. So in Sudan, every 2 hours, a child dies in a Sudanese camp for displaced people amid the ongoing civil war. Again, every 2 hours, a child dies in a Sudanese camp. Every 2 hours. That means that 12 children are experiencing loss of life per day in Sudanese camps. The UN warns 4.1 billion in aid is now needed to stave off the famine across the country. Fighting is spreading to critical regions along certain areas, which is the nation's breadbasket. So as a result, at least 18 million people are now actually food insecure. This means they don't have enough food to eat and don't know where the next meal is coming from. It's really important information to have. And it was new to me, so I wanted to share it with you. We got Manelik in the building. Good evening. Good evening. Jerry Campbell is sharing his disappointment with that as well. Yes, it's really crazy. So definitely check out this article when you get a chance on the page. Sorry, guys. Excuse me. So lastly, the last story that I want to go over is there's been protests in Senegal recently. Now, at least 3 protesters experienced loss of life by security forces during the ongoing unrest in Senegal, including a 16-year-old. So one of them was a 16-year-old. The country is going through the worst political crisis since independence from colonial power of France in 1960. The president of Senegal had made a decision to postpone elections on short notice, delaying them to nearly a year. That obviously sparked widespread outrage. This move was effectively granted him significant extensions to his term without any electoral mandate, leading to the mass protests nationwide. So can you imagine whatever country you're in, when you're watching from, your president just says, we're postponing elections for a year. We're going to do this next year. That might sound familiar to some of you, especially some of you from around these parts in which I'm staying currently. But in Dakar, they decided enough was enough. And it was pretty violent protest. Let me see if there's any questions, comments, thoughts from IG. I see them from YouTube, but anything from IG? So Juan Pablo said, sorry, I didn't make it on time. Did you guys talk about the Senegal situation? If not, can we address it? Well, yeah, perfect timing because we are just now addressing it. As you mentioned it, of course, you can go to the page on Instagram to watch it in full. Now, there was a post that was supposed to go up today, but we had some technical difficulties. But I also wanted to mention that there was actually a Super Bowl ad that focused on Ghana. And it was an interesting one because they actually shot it at Makola Market in Ghana. If you've ever seen, I have a video at Makola Market that I did with Kels and True Vaughn. And it was interesting to see that this kind of way that they're trying to new countries and try their best to continue to make football grow outside of the United States, much like what the all around the globe, happens with American style football, which, by the way, probably is going to be difficult because you already are conflating the name with the name of a sport that's already very popular in these countries. So, but anyway, they're trying to build a pipeline of people who want to play in the NFL, and who better than to go after West Africans, because that is something that they do all the time now, especially with basketball. If you think about Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam to some extent, but there are lots of these guys that have West African heritage, and they've been crushing it in professional sports, specifically basketball, and in some in football, but without a concerted effort to ensure that. So Juan Pablo is asking, what interest do I think the president of Senegal has to postpone the elections? Do I think France is behind that decision? I would not speculate whether or not France is behind that decision. I don't know. And I also don't know what the motivations might be, except that people don't like giving up power. That's one thing. If I'm going to speculate, that'd be the only speculation I'd make, is that once people are in power, it's hard to give it up. Even countries that have a peaceful transition of power, people who disagree. Ow. I think I just strained my finger. Really, it just really hurt. So I don't know. United States is a people transition of power, but there are many people who dispute the elections. And I think depending on who was in the White House, that person may have decided to make decisions to stay in or whatever. And so, and so I think these are things that you have to take into consideration, right? Is that, many countries that you would consider having the peaceful transition of power runs into these issues. And so it could be a host of any number of things that would ask them to stay. Somebody's asking about how the buses are working in Freetown currently. More help than harm. Depends on who you are. That's a conversation for, we'll get back to that because that is a news story in Africa. So we'll get back to that in a second. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I missed in terms of another story. All right. So I didn't miss anything in terms of another story, so we can answer that question. But before I do, let's get some more thoughts. So Jerry Campbell is speaking on this. It's time we face the reality that these UN agencies are neither, I guess, mooing peace or saving children. We're going to have to do this work for ourselves. Yes, absolutely. We as a continent are going to have to do the work for ourselves. It's time we face the reality. Okay, neither keeping the peace nor saving children. Got it. All right, cool. Did we get through all the stories? I think we did. Let me see if there's any other questions or comments. All right, I think that's it for now, guys. We'll keep it short. We don't need to go over an hour today. We're looking to have some interviews shortly in the next coming weeks, so we'll keep you posted on that. But until then, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this with 3 people who you know are interested in what's happening on the continent, and I'll see you all on the next video.